there doesn't have to be anything that holds you back. That there doesn't have to be anything that limits you and your ability. And then with that understanding, what arises then is something that's very, very spectacular, and we call it joy. And the beautiful thing about this level of joy is that it's not conditioned. It's not glued to anything like a new car or a TV show or a drink or a drug. It's not glued or fixed to any kind of thought or ideology or notion, right? It's completely unhindered. And therefore you begin to realize that there is one thing that's actually permanent or lasting. And that's this potential, and that's this ability to experience joy. And then when one feels this joy, one begins to be very, very natural in one's actions that are compassionate or beneficial to others. So when we practice meditations, and if you go to different Buddhist centers, whether it be like Zen or a different form of Tibetan Buddhism or Theravada or Thai Buddhism, all different kinds of methods or meditations or practices that one can do to understand how the mind works, right? But all of our meditations are focused on this ability to see the potential, not only in ourselves, but in all beings, to see that this really is the one thing that links us all together. This really is this one thing that really connects all beings in all times and all places. And that's this potential, this Buddha nature, this ability to be aware, this ability to be conscious, this ability to act based on one's perceptions, this ability to take in experience and actually utilize it and base one's behavior off of one's experience instead of just being told what to do and then doing it. Yeah? If one can, for lack of a better way of saying it, exploit this potential, one has a straight shot to a state of mind that is completely free and unhindered. And this is what we're really looking for when we learn how to meditate. This may feel strange at first because, like, for example, you'll do what's called the 16th Karmapa meditation. And you're going to listen to me read it, and it's going to be fully guided, and you'll do your best, hopefully, to follow along. And at the same time, these methods are providing ways for you to at first recognize your ability to be aware, and then to stay conscious of this ability to be aware, and then eventually to be able to just completely rest in this awareness. And then through this ability to rest in this awareness, see truly and honestly that all things are possible. In our particular Buddhist practice, we accept the plausibility of something that's called rebirth or reincarnation. So we accept the notion that if one has attained a high realization of how the mind functions and how the world works, then one at the time of one's death can choose rebirth and stick around, just in another form, another body, however you want to call it, right? So the 16th Karmapa is a gentleman in the center that's behind me. He has a 17th incarnation, which is the young man on the wall over there. He is the head of our lineage, which means that he is one of the few beings in this world that actually holds within his mind all of the teachings of the Buddha and all of the interpretations. He holds everything. This end to suffering is this path that Buddha taught. Well, that can be, for some people, in the mind of the beholder, in the sense that some people could just believe that that's not the only way out of suffering, right? And the Buddha and all of his practitioners after him were open to that. There's probably many paths and many ways to practice where one can gain a really good understanding of how not only the world functions, but how the mind functions. But in this case, if we look just within these three truths, we realize something very, very profound. Even something that is an antidote to suffering that's as relative or as conventional as something like the 12-step path, right? Like Alcoholics Anonymous or something, you know? They have 12 ways of saying to themselves, You have to understand that you have a problem. And if you don't understand it, you can't do anything about it. And there's a way out of that problem, and it requires your understanding, and then it requires your effort. Then if you apply those three things, you can get out, right? I use that as an example because what the Buddha is teaching in his Four Noble Truths is something that we do all of the time. And this is based on our own human faculties of awareness, our ability to think, our ability to understand, our ability to take in experience and apply it to our daily lives. And the Four Noble Truths are just a very, very concise way of understanding that. And this is why a lot of people who practice Buddhism will consider it a universal practice. And what we mean by that is that it's something that can apply to everybody, right? Which is, if you're somebody like me, you can say, you don't have to be Buddhist to be Buddhist, right? Anybody can use the teachings, regardless of whatever anybody's spiritual background is. Because, in this sense then, Buddhism's not a religion, right? And it's not a psychology, but it encompasses many components that people associate with religion and psychology. After we've calmed our mind for a bit, we're going to entertain what's called four basic thoughts. And these thoughts actually help motivate us to understand our present situation. The first one is that our opportunity that we have right now in this present moment in this life is very precious, and we should use it in a meaningful way. The reason it's precious is thought number two, because all things are impermanent. Nothing lasts. Nothing sticks around or stays. Anything that is made of parts breaks, basically. You know? And unfortunately, including our bodies, right? Well, we know that things are impermanent because of the third thought, that causes have effects, that actions always lead to results, and there is no thing that always stays the same. And then if we can understand, if we can hold these three thoughts in our mind, we begin to realize that now is the perfect opportunity to do something meaningful, to focus on things that are meaningful, focus on things that can bring at least a somewhat lasting benefit to our lives and to the lives of others. And with these four thoughts in our mind, then we do something that's very important in all forms of Buddhism, and this is refuge. Refuge is can be for some people like seeking shelter from a storm or relying on something else until we feel strong enough to do it ourselves. But on this Diamond Way level, on this Vajrayana level, refuge is this ability to identify with this potential that I was speaking of before. And we see this potential expressed in three ways. Buddha, not just as a being that lived 2,500 years ago, but as this mind that is completely awakened, completely aware, completely experiencing all things without judging. Right? We see it in the methods and the meditations and this practice where one can actually understand awareness and use mind in a way that's beneficial. And we understand it in the community of those who practice the teachings, right? Because they can be really be like good hands on our backs, helping us to stay up when we feel down. And then all three of these Buddha Dharma Sangha are manifest in what we consider our teacher. He or she expresses those three things all of the time through their actions of body, speech, and mind. And then once we take refuge, we do something that's everything's very important, but we do the next very important thing, which is we build up an image in space of this teacher, of this enlightened being. And in the meditation, it's going to be fully described, so you just follow along. And when I say seeing, I don't mean like one sees with the eyes. I mean more one experiences. Yeah? Just like at first it might start out as one uses one's imagination and builds up an image in one's mind. But then the more one practices the meditation, the more one begins to understand that it's simply just kind of knowing that that experience is there, and then focusing one's awareness on it, and then practicing that focus so that thoughts no longer become so important.